This is going to be quite a long video. This video looks at the dungeon run in its entirety, so that's including all the trash, the ways, the puzzles, the bosses, everything. So if you want to learn, obviously, or even just watch the entire dungeon path, stay tuned. But if you want the puzzles or bosses specifically, I'll throw up a few links. They'll be there for a few seconds, so click on those if you want the specific puzzles or bosses, tactics for those. Be there for a few seconds, or stay tuned for the rest. Hey folks, this is Kalani. We're going to be looking at the new Aetherpath located in the Twilight Arbor. Now this path does require level 80, so it's tuned for level 80, and obviously you want to be rolling with the best gear you can find for the best chances. Now it starts off pretty simple. You need to talk to Keith, choose the path, and then you can head on through. What you've got before you is a few plants, which are a little annoying but do get one shot, so clear them out nice and easily and you can move forward. You've got some trash to take care of first. It's not too difficult. Some dogs which will pounce on you and husks which summon bees. Take those out. I recommend quite a bit of control in AoE. The dogs can be a complete pain. Run a few stun breaks or relocates, anything which basically get you out of the stun, and smash your way through them. After you've cleared out this trash, you can head through the door which opens. Now, through here we've got more ads, more trash mobs, but these are jungle worms. Now, these will do a huge AoE, but they tend to gather up quite nicely, so you can AoE them down nice and fast. Burn down these, and you can head through to the first puzzle. Put you on and mark. So this is where things start to get a little interesting. Now what we've got is a huge field of fire, which is basically a nice maze. Now we've got fire elementals which spawn, or rather lava elementals which spawn all around the outside, and we've got oozes. Now the gate has 2 cogs, which we need to take an ooze to. We need to take 1 ooze to each cog, and we need to do essentially both of them within about 10 seconds of each other. If one gets to the cog first and the other comes after that delay, then you kind of run out of time and you'll need to run it again. So you do need to get these oozes there pretty close to each other. Now there's a few ways to do this. Some groups have been basically running one person around, gathering all the elementals and trying to kite them off to a place which doesn't bother the oozes, because the elementals in the ooze do fight. Now, the way you need to guide the ooze is to use one of the plants nearby the ooze. That'll give you a pheromone mark. That'll make the ooze follow you. Now, you need to use that mark to guide the ooze through the flames to the cog, without it getting killed by the elementals, basically. Now, reflects work really well here. You've got reflects, projectile destruction, basically face tanking them. Blinding works really well as well. In this run we did 4 in 1. We had 2 thieves, a guardian and a ranger. Basically I took the right hand side because I was able to do this pretty much on my own with projectile destruction and a decent amount of reflects. I could happily run it through. Interestingly, if the elementals kind of don't have anywhere to go, they'll follow the closest ooze, so you could have all the elementals from the right just go over to the left. Now, depending on obviously how your group is set up, you may be able to do this a few different ways, but elementalists and guardians are really, really good at this. So through the next room, we've got a lot of Etherblade mobs. Now, these are basically the ones we've been fighting for God knows how long. They've got the static fields, they've got the invulnerability shields, all the annoying stuff. You also get your first Stormwatcher. Now, interestingly, the first time we ran this and we attacked the Stormwatcher, everything came running. But in this run it doesn't. So I'm not entirely sure if that was broken on either run, or we were just a bit too far forward on the first run. So what we tried to do here was pull everything behind the rock behind us. Basically to line of sight, get everything stacked up nicely so we could nuke them down. Getting through this room is relatively easy, it's not too bad. When you get up kind of a bit later, if you go left into a spring, you can actually find two Etherblades in swimsuits kind of just chilling. It's pretty funny, but you don't need to go down there. So if you want to just let them slack, let them slack. But someone said achievement in our group, so we killed them, but never mind. After this, we got another boss fight. So, the boss room's up ahead. Now, the first time you come in here, Sparky will burn all the plants, so you don't need to worry about that. Now, there's a few interesting things in this fight. The first is that Slick will throw down tar pools. Now, these tar pools seem to give kind of a proximity debuff of poison stacks. Now, you can't really do anything about these. But if you get too much tar down, then you get more poison stacks, and this is kind of an AoE degradation damage. So, the higher the stacks, the more damage over time you're going to take. Obviously, if you don't get rid of the tar, you're going to die. Sparky can actually set the tar on fire. Now, while you're in the tar, while it's tar, it will do damage to you, but it also increases the duration of burning on you to the point where you can literally burn to death very easily if you don't have condition removal. The other thing is that he will throw pheromones. So he's got two. He throws tarpals and he'll throw a pheromone mark. Now, the pheromone mark will guide the ooze in the fight, and the ooze needs to be dragged over the tar piles, the tar, the slick, the fire, whatever, to suck it up. Now, that gets rid of the tar, but the ooze then gets stacks of energized, which we'll get to a bit later. But what we did was focus down Slick. Get rid of Slick, get rid of the tar, get rid of the poison debuff, and we can happily kind of not have to deal with that, so we can take down Sparky in our own time. After Slick went down, we focused on Sparky. Now, the reason we didn't kill the ooze was because when you kill the ooze and it has stacks, it throws all that poison out into the area. Now, that gives you a ridiculous amount of these poison stacks for a brief duration, but it was enough to kill all 5 of us in a very short amount of time. Which was kind of interesting. So I'd recommend ignoring the ooze, because if you can kite it, it doesn't really do anything. It does some small range damage, but its massive attacks are melee, so it's not really worth worrying about. Taking out Sparky will finish the fight and the ooze will just bugger off. So Sparky has a few annoying abilities. Now, bear in mind, when you kill one boss, the other one enrages, so it does more damage and attacks faster. Sparky has a grab pull, which will pull you towards her, and she has a huge AoE firestorm type deal. Interestingly, they don't seem to count as projectiles. I can't destroy them with projectile destruction, and they can't be reflected. Although someone commented about a Mesmer Phantasm being able to completely negate that ability. There, you see it there. So I'm not entirely sure if that was behaving properly for us or not. So it's kind of an attrition battle after that. You've basically, if you take it down like we did and take down Slick first, you can take down Sparky in your own time as long as you can survive her AoE. You don't have to deal with any persistent poison debuffs, which is really painful. So this is how we did it, and we think this is how it works best. If you take out Sparky, Slick can go crazy, meaning that he throws out more tar, meaning you've got more poison debuffs, which we didn't like. We really didn't like. An interesting one is you can actually take them down to about the same health and try kill them together, so you don't have to deal with the enrage buff. Basically, do whatever you feel best. Try out a few ones if you're struggling, and you'll get there eventually. So in the next room we've got a lot of ether blades. Now once again, static fields, invulnerability shields, all the annoying stuff. So they're relatively easy to take down, and it actually gets very interesting from here because we get the first of our holographic enemies, which are pretty cool. Now what you've got is a generator producing the holographic enemies, and the holographic enemies kind of explode on death, and it's an electrical explosion. Now if you read the text on the generator, they are susceptible to electrical attacks, more or less, even though I was annoyed that I couldn't like use my staff. But basically what you have to do is kill the holographic enemies on top of the generator, which can be a bit annoying because they actually come out immune and they run off a little bit, so you have to kind of drag them back, but blowing them up on top of the generator is the only way to kill it. What's interesting is that they seem to chain react, in that when you kill a holographic enemy on top of a holographic enemy, they'll kill the rest of them, all explode, basically in a chain reaction. So if you gather loads up together, you just have to kill one, but bear in mind if you're on top of that explosion, you're gonna die. It's pretty much the same deal in the next room, except you've got two generators to deal with. So obviously take out the other blades, blow up one generator, blow up the other generator, and move on. This next room can be a little bit annoying simply because of the amount of mobs. Now what you want to do is take out the Stormwatcher first, and that'll stop the mobs spawning. Now obviously you can happily AoE down the rest of them, or take them out one by one, whatever your group is best suited for. But you need to kill all of these so you can happily move forward without much resistance. Through this room we've got another boss to deal with. Now the boss has a lot of ads. There's actually an achievement here for killing the boss before any of his ads, which is interesting. I can't wait to try that one out, but let's play it safe for now. So to get through this you kind of want to pull the Watcher, kill the Watcher, and then take out all the other mobs. So obviously AoE works brilliantly. Taking them out is going to take a little bit of time, but it makes sure that you've got the cleanest slate possible to take on the boss, who can be quite annoying. So setting up for this boss, we've got a nice clean slate, no ads. What we need to deal with is basically his AoE. So he has a few very painful abilities. He'll throw his axes kind of on the floor, and they'll have a spinning animation. It's really odd, but basically there's an AoE on the floor which you need to step out of. You can see it dotted around. He'll also use a whirlwind attack. Now, if you're right next to him in this whirlwind attack, it'll actually drag you along, doing damage all the while. So you've got a whirlwind of his to deal with, and an AoE on the floor. Now, later on into the fight, he actually starts kind of with a... It's really odd. It's like a wind barrier around his area, and basically you won't be able to get out of it. You can see it here. Now, that will push you backwards into the center of it. So you can't get out of here unless you lightning flash out, or if you can get out, but if you're kind of on the very outside of it, because it'll actually do damage to you in its effect, you can't reach the boss. So basically try to deal with it, but obviously that limits your room to move, so you'll need to be very careful of the AoE once again, and of his AoE, because your gain space kind of just got reduced. It's not too difficult. A lot of DPS and kind of awareness to avoid all of the damage, and you're pretty much laughing. You can't... Once you can see the abilities coming, it's very easy to dodge. It's very easy to avoid all of the damage in this fight. So just apply a bit of fire, a bit of poison, nuke him down, and you can happily move on. So after that boss fight, we can happily move up around to the corner. We got a new waypoint, so there's no more running back. Now this puzzle is really fun, although I'd recommend not standing where we are. We go into the room happily, hey, but I'd recommend standing near the door if you don't want to get instantly electrocuted, which you'll see in just a moment. So basically what you need to do is jump onto the platform which is activated without a charge. If you get electrocuted by the floor, you'll get a negative charge and won't be able to get on the platform. The puzzle will reset every time there is a platform activated, and whenever you die, you'll actually get respawned on the previous platform. Now, obviously, you can see a maze through the electric fields. Now, what you need to do is make your way through that. Remember that this will change with each one, and you need to basically get across without getting hit by the electric field on the floor, and you can happily, continue. So it'll go from as you enter the room, the bottom right, bottom left, and top left. Now the door's at the top left, which kind of plays a key role. Now here, we kind of use thieves to jump across, lightning flash. Bear in mind you can't lightning flash or jump off a platform, which is kind of annoying, but when you've got all 4 platforms active, holograms start to spawn. Now what you need to do is get that hologram over to the top left, towards the door. There's a control panel there, which basically says that you can't use it, but a strong enough electric discharge may kind of blow it up. So we kind of ignored it until it went to the top left. Killed it at top left, it opened the door, and we could head through. Now you can use things like grabs, things like pushes, that kind of thing. Our thief, who was aggroed first, stealthed, so there's opportunities depending on your group setup. So we got one last trash pack to take care of, and then we can happily move on to the very last boss. Once again, they're Ether Blades, so all the annoying stuff. The static fields, the invulnerability shields, just nuke them down. 3, 2, 1, and mark. So going into the boss room, we've got a few more generators to play with. Now we've got 8 all around the room. Now obviously these are going to happily start spewing out holograms, and we need to basically use those holograms to destroy the generators. So I move around in a circle, gathering the holograms in one area, causing a chain reaction, preferably without killing yourself, and then move on to the next hologram generator. Now bear in mind that the floor will become electrocuted, and pads similar to the ones you used in the puzzle in the previous room will come up from the floor to give you kind of a safe area. Now they do seem a little buggy in that they'll kind of throw you about a bit. The collision detection must be a little bit off on them, or kind of working strangely. They're really annoying, to put it bluntly, but hey, if it stops you getting electrocuted, oh well. While you're stood on the electrocuted floor, you'll get stacks of a static debuff, I believe it is. Now, these do hurt, and you shouldn't let them stack very high. Now, after you've destroyed them all, you'll start with the actual boss fight. Bear in mind that if you wipe before all of them are destroyed, I believe you'll have to start from the start? I don't know. People were saying that they reset. We kind of didn't wipe on the generators, so I can't confirm any part of that. But I do know that after you destroy all 8 generators, if you wipe and all die, you'll come back straight to the boss. So you won't have to deal with the generators again if you destroy all of them in one run. So, coming into the boss fight, when you kill the generators for the first time, he'll instantly pull. Every time you wipe after that, you'll be able to run back into the room, and he'll be in the middle of the room, so you can pull him when you want. Now, the first ability which I want to talk about is you just saw there, the cogs, which get thrown onto the floor, they'll spin, do some AoE damage, stay away from them. He has an AoE attack, which you saw just there, hefty amount of damage, kind of avoid by range or dodge it, and his last attack is a frontal cone, which just downed me. That's a lot of damage. That hit me for over 12,000. So either stay behind him, kind of kite him in a circle so he can't really hit you with that, or evade it. You can't really afford to get hit by that too many times. That's literally all the abilities you need to worry about in this kind of phase. He'll swap between this, where he's damageable and doing all these abilities, into a phase where he starts to power up. Now in that he'll take 0 damage and he'll have an armor debuff. Or buff, I suppose. Now what you need to do is get one of the holographic strikers which are around the room, and you'll need to basically kill the holographic striker on top of the boss. This is really awkward because the boss doesn't like to follow you half the time because half of his abilities are AoE. So getting him to the striker is pretty difficult, and the striker's ranged, so kiting him back to the boss is really frustrating as well. What we ended up doing is using the thieves with scorpion wire. Now, scorpion wire the mob onto the boss, kill the mob, and basically go from there. If he manages to get all 30 stacks, you're going to have a really rough time, because he'll then channel basically his huge AoE. Now that huge AoE hits, I think it's about 5 times, so you can't dodge all of them. It knocks you back. If you get knocked back into the middle, you're going to take a lot of AoE damage from the lightning there. That does do damage over time if you're stood in the middle. So it gets a bit awkward. Now the other thing is that if he manages to cast his supercharge ability, it seems to electrify 1/4 of the area. That's the only thing we could tie with the area become electrified was him channeling that, but sometimes it didn't seem to, which was really odd, so we may have that wrong, but I'm not sure. When we didn't have basically when we managed to get his armor debuff off him, it wouldn't electrify the area, and when we failed it 3 times in a row, we only had a quarter left to work with because the other 3 became electrified. So I'm not sure if that's horrible coincidence or something else, but either way. So you're going between damaging him and kiting him to get these armor stacks off him. Now, it can be really, really awkward sometimes, as I say, due to the striker. So if you're going to kind of fail, like if he gets to 25 stacks without a striker anywhere near him, I'd recommend running to the other end of the room. There doesn't seem to be any timed enrage here, which basically means you've got all the time in the world as long as you can stay alive. Now, being at the other end of the room will get you, basically, it's got a range on it, his ability, so you're okay if you're far enough away, but it's still not ideal, because while he's armoured up, and while obviously you're not getting that armour off him, if that makes sense, you can't damage him, so it's more time, which means that you may end up losing to either the cogs, his AoE, simple attrition, or again the electrifying fields, basically, if they do happen. I'm not entirely sure if that is tied to his supercharged ability, but it makes a lot of sense. Now, getting through this fight is actually relatively simple as long as you can execute things nicely. As I say, getting the striker on top of the boss is the most awkward part. We had to rely on a scorpion wire from a thief, which obviously not everyone is going to have, but if you've got pulls, if you've got pushes, they can work really, really well. Getting the O-cart to the striker is probably harder than getting the striker to the O-cart, obviously because he's going to be AoEing you all in the face, and if you end up getting really unlucky with positioning and his frontal smash hits all of you, that's probably going to be a dead group. So, literally rinse and repeat, go from damaging him, try and nuke him down as quickly as possible. That's obviously going to be the best way. If you've got a lot of damage, you need to make use of that damage. Avoid the cogs, try to stay at some range, so you've got a decent range away from him for his AoE ability, avoid the frontal smash, and try to get the strikers on top of him for the armor debuff phase. I really can't say anything else about this fight. It's pretty simple as long as you can execute it perfectly. Now, one thing that I will say is it is quite unforgiving. If you get hit by the cogs several times, you get hit by the frontal smash several times, you're going to die, which obviously is not ideal. So, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.